Isn't it strange? The moment you feel the most connected to an avoidant, when you're laughing together, when they open up a little, when it finally feels like they've let you in, that's exactly when they pull back. It doesn't make logical sense to the average person. We're taught that closeness leads to more closeness, that intimacy is built through shared vulnerability, but avoidance, they learn the opposite. For them, intimacy is not a safe haven, it's a battlefield, a psychological minefield tied to early relational experiences, often rooted in inconsistency, emotional neglect, or even covert trauma. So when an avoidant starts feeling something deep, real, raw, electric, their nervous system doesn't say lean in, it screams run. Because in their world, love isn't familiar, it's dangerous. You see, avoidants don't avoid because they don't care, they avoid because they do. And that caring wakes up every unconscious fear they've buried beneath layers of self-protection. They built emotional walls with surgical precision, not out of arrogance, but survival. And here you come, loving them, seeing them, holding up a mirror to their hidden heart. That's terrifying, because love means exposure. It means the mask could fall. And for someone who spent their life being independent, self-reliant, and emotionally armored, that's not romantic. That's war. So when they begin to feel safe with you, their deepest programming kicks in. This is too good. This can't last. They're going to leave me once they see who I really am. And just like that, they vanish. Not because the love was fake, but because it was too real. Here's what most people miss. When an avoidant pulls away after intimacy, it's not a sign that you did something wrong. It's a sign that you reached a place no one else ever has. You got too close to the heart. They don't even let themselves feel. It's like opening a vault that's been sealed for decades. The light hurts their eyes. Your presence exposed something raw, and instead of feeling held by it, they retreat to the only thing they've ever trusted, distance. They may stop texting, go cold, become dismissive, pick a fight out of nowhere, all subtle ways of saying, I'm scared of how much I need you. But they'll never say that. Avoidants don't articulate fear, they translate it into space, into silence, into withdrawal. And this is where most people walk away, confused, heartbroken, assuming they were never loved. But the truth is far more complex, because that withdrawal, that disappearing act, that's often the first time they're feeling love so intensely, they don't know how to regulate it. Avoidants are masters of emotional suppression. They don't cry in front of you, they don't confess at midnight, but you'll feel their soul shift the moment they get close. And ironically, the very thing they've been craving, real connection, becomes the very thing they self-sabotage. But listen closely. Their retreat doesn't mean the connection is dead. It means the battle within them just reached its peak. This is the moment their healing either begins or repeats the same cycle it's always followed. You have to understand that love to an avoidant feels like a loss of control, and control is their armor. So when they feel love for you, they pull back to regain balance, not because they want to lose you, but because they're terrified of losing themselves in the process. That's why emotional intimacy with an avoidant often feels like a dance. 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. But every time they come close and retreat, they're actually showing you how deeply their wiring fears emotional dependence. It's not rejection, it's revelation. And that revelation, that's your key. If you react to their pullback with panic, chasing, or emotional outbursts, it confirms their fear that closeness is chaotic. But if you hold your ground, if you don't collapse, if you remain centered, you teach them something new, that love doesn't have to equal suffocation. Because here's the paradox. The avoidant is drawn to the one who doesn't abandon themselves in the presence of their emotional confusion. That's how they learn to trust, not through your words, but through your non-reaction. Your consistency, your steadiness, that is what breaks the cycle. So the next time you feel an avoidant pull away after something beautiful, Don't internalize it. Don't chase them to validate your worth. Instead, recognize the moment for what it is, a signal that your presence is doing something their nervous system doesn't yet understand. It's awakening love in someone who's spent a lifetime running from it. And that kind of impact, it's not rejection, that's power. Avoidants rarely say what they feel. They almost never ask for what they need, but that doesn't mean they're indifferent. It means they're terrified. Terrified that if they open their mouth and speak from the heart, their world will collapse. So instead of directly asking, can I trust you? Will you stay? Or do you love me even when I'm not perfect? They test you, but not the kind of test you're thinking. These aren't fun little loyalty games. These are unconscious emotional crucibles designed to push you to your breaking point, not to hurt you, but to see if you'll survive what they fear most, their emotional chaos. Avoidants test your patience, your presence, your limits. Why? Because they've learned through experience that love isn't unconditional. In their world, love is earned, or worse, lost without warning. Somewhere along the way, they were made to believe that people leave, that no one stays, that attachment equals eventual abandonment. So now, without even realizing it, they replicate the storm to see who can handle the weather. They'll go silent for days, respond with cold, one-word messages, act uninterested just to observe your reaction. They'll push you emotionally, sometimes even provoke a fight, not to destroy the connection, but to study your response. Will you attack them? Will you beg for attention? Will you abandon your own dignity for their scraps of affection? Because if you do, in their eyes, you just confirm their deepest fear, that love is manipulation in disguise. But here's the shocking truth. If you pass the test, if you remain calm, self-respecting, emotionally grounded, something starts to shift inside them. They don't verbalize it, they don't even consciously understand it, but they start to feel safe. Not because you chased them, not because you proved your love, but because you didn't lose yourself when they tried to lose you. You see, avoidants aren't asking, can I love you? They're asking, can I be loved and still be broken? They'll never walk into the room and say, I'm scared, I feel exposed, please don't leave. That level of vulnerability is foreign, even dangerous to them. But they will test you. They'll create small emotional earthquakes, watch the fallout, and quietly take notes. Every time you show up with steady energy, every time you respond with mature boundaries instead of emotional chaos, you're rewriting their reality of what love looks like. Avoidants grew up in emotional unpredictability. Sometimes love was present, sometimes it was withdrawn. So their nervous system became addicted to inconsistency. Stability feels boring or worse, suspicious. So they test the relationship to see if your calm is real or performative. They want to know, will you stay the same when I shift? That's not manipulation, that's hypervigilance born from pain. But here's the trap most people fall into. They mistake the test for a rejection. They assume the coldness means disinterest. And so they overextend, they chase, they beg. They try to fix the avoidant instead of standing still and radiating certainty. And the moment you do that, the moment you abandon your emotional integrity to pass their test, the avoidant subconsciously loses trust in the connection because now you've become what they feared, emotionally unpredictable. This is the paradox. Avoidants don't trust intensity, they trust consistency. But they need to test you to get there. You can't convince them to open up. You have to demonstrate through repetition that you are emotionally sovereign, that their storm doesn't move your foundation, that you're not here to save them, you're here to be with them without losing yourself. You have to become the one person who doesn't react the way everyone else did, the one who doesn't turn cold when they test you, the one who doesn't chase when they pull back, the one who doesn't abandon ship at the first sign of turbulence. Because if you can do that, if you can hold your frame in the face of their silent storms, they start to trust something they've never trusted before, intimacy that doesn't cost them their freedom. And that's the moment real love begins. Not the fairy tale kind, not the all-consuming codependent romance, but the love that's grounded, mature, and transformative, the kind of love that heals not with words, but with presence. So when they test your patience, when they push every emotional button you've got, remember this: it's not about you failing, it's about whether your energy can hold up under pressure. Because avoidants don't need your perfection. They need your emotional integrity. And if you pass that test, you don't just earn their loyalty, you earn their respect. And to an avoidant, that is love. If you're waiting for an avoidant to express their love the way you've seen in movies, forget it. They don't wear their heart on their sleeve. They don't announce their feelings in poetic declarations. They speak a different language entirely, one made of silence, observation, and subtle mimicry. It's quiet, it's covert, but it's real. One of the most overlooked signs that an avoidant is falling for you is mirroring. And no, I don't mean copying your words like a parrot or mimicking your gestures to mock you. I mean unconscious, subtle shifts. They start using the phrases you use. They adopt your routines. They change their timing to match yours. They pick up your energy and reflect it back, not because they're trying to manipulate, but because it's the only way they feel safe connecting. Avoidants don't feel safe plunging into emotional intensity. That level of vulnerability threatens their sense of control. But mirroring, that's their way of coming closer without crossing the invisible boundary of exposure. It's a psychological tether. It says, I see you. I'm trying to feel you. I don't know how to say it, so I'll show you by becoming a little more like you. It's not superficial, it's primal. It's the mind's way of forging emotional proximity while bypassing the conscious terror of intimacy. Think of it like this. When a baby first bonds with its caregiver, it learns by mirroring facial expressions, emotional tones, even breathing rhythms. That's how humans connect long before they can speak. Avoidance, emotionally speaking, often remains stuck in that pre-verbal stage when it comes to love. They bypass verbal connection and default to pattern recognition. They're studying you, not to judge, but to understand. They remember things most people miss. Your routines, your coffee order, the way your tone shifts when you're tired. And then, without asking, they start to reflect it. Not perfectly, not always consciously, but it's their attempt to meet you where words fail them. You might notice that they suddenly start waking up earlier, just like you do. Or they change the way they respond to texts, matching your rhythm. Or they begin to use your language, your metaphors, your tone. These are not coincidences. They are acts of emotional camouflage, yes, but also attempts at closeness. Because the avoidant mind is afraid to stand still and be seen. But it can move towards you by echoing what you show them. That mirroring is not manipulation. It's vulnerability disguised as distance. And here's the deeper truth. When an avoidant mirrors you, they're not just trying to connect with you, they're also trying to connect with themselves. You represent something they've long suppressed: openness, emotional expression, presence. By stepping into your world, piece by piece, they are tiptoeing toward the version of themselves they've never fully embraced. It's easy to miss this if you're expecting grand gestures or verbal reassurance. But avoidants don't love out loud. They love in patterns, in changes, in soft shifts that show up not in their words, but in their behavior. And if you're truly paying attention, you'll start to notice them trying to become in sync with you. That's the greatest irony. Avoidants crave connection, but they fear being consumed by it. So they find ways to stay in proximity without losing their individuality. Mirroring becomes a bridge. It lets them feel near without feeling exposed, safe without being smothered. But here's the thing. If you don't recognize this for what it is, you might assume they're just being polite or coincidental or even disingenuous. And if you respond with doubt, or emotional neediness, it breaks the trust they're trying to build. Slowly, carefully, in their own language. So when you see those subtle shifts, honor them. When they show up and echo your rhythm, recognize it for what it is, their version of intimacy, because this isn't a grand confession, it's not a movie moment, but it is a form of connection that's incredibly vulnerable for someone who spent most of their life emotionally guarded. Avoidance won't say, I'm falling for you, but they'll start to walk like you, talk like you, adapt to your flow, hoping you'll feel them in the way they feel you. That's their silent way of saying, I care, but I'm still learning how to show it. And if you can see that, truly see it, then you've already broken through a barrier most never do. Because love for an avoidant isn't loud. It's whispered through behavior. And only the emotionally awake will hear it. Let's talk about one of the most shocking behaviors you'll ever see from an avoidant. The moment they show up. Not when things are easy, not when the mood is light, not when affection is low risk, but when it matters. When you're hurting, when your life is falling apart, when you expect no one to be there. That's when the avoidant, the person you thought emotionally checked out, quietly walks into the room. And you don't understand it because you're still carrying the confusion of all the moments they didn't show up before. But here's the paradox. Avoidants don't show love through consistency. They show love through presence and chaos. And the reason is powerful and painful. You have to understand how their emotional world works. Avoidants are often raised in environments where vulnerability was punished or ignored, where needing someone meant being disappointed, where expressing fear or sadness got met with silence, or worse, shame. So they developed a protective mechanism: don't need anyone, and don't let anyone need you. But that protection has a cost. They become emotionally distant, unavailable, and hard to read. And yet, underneath all that armor is someone who does feel deeply. They just don't trust those feelings or themselves enough to act on them consistently. So what happens when someone they care about is in real pain? For the first time, the avoidant has a clear roadmap. You're not asking for emotional closeness. You're not pressuring them to be romantic or vulnerable. You're simply in a state of distress, and that triggers something ancient inside of them, the instinct to protect. That's when the avoidance surprises you. They check in when you're sick. They quietly help when you're struggling. They do the errand you didn't ask for. Bring the thing you didn't mention. Not loudly, not dramatically, but they're there. And for someone who runs from emotional intensity, showing up in your darkest moment is the ultimate expression of love, because it goes against everything their fear tells them to do. Avoidants fear emotional entanglement, but crisis gives them clarity. It strips away the gray areas that usually make them freeze, and for once, they know exactly what to do. Because deep down, avoidants want to love, they just don't know how to do it without feeling like they're going to lose themselves. So when they step into your storm, it's not casual, it's not an accident, it's an act of emotional courage. What most people miss is this: that moment they show up when it matters most is their version of a love letter. They won't text you paragraphs at midnight, they won't call you crying, but they'll be in the hospital waiting room, they'll fix your tire without saying a word, they'll sit beside you in silence when they know words won't help. And in those moments, you are witnessing something sacred. A guarded soul choosing to risk connection for your sake. And yes, they may disappear again after. They may go right back to their emotional distance. Not because the love was fake, but because the exposure was real. Being present in crisis drained them in a way they don't know how to process. They weren't taught how to stay emotionally open. They were taught how to survive emotional shutdown. So don't measure their love by how consistently they talk about it. Measure it by the weight they're willing to carry when your world falls apart. If they're willing to override their fear of closeness just to make sure you're okay, you've seen a side of them that most never will. That's not indifference. That's love in disguise. And you have to ask yourself, can you recognize love even when it doesn't look like what you expected? Because the avoidant's greatest act of devotion won't be a grand romantic gesture. It'll be them breaking their own rules to be there when no one else is. They may never say, I love you, but they'll do the one thing that terrifies them. They'll stay when it would be easier to run. Let's talk about the behavior that confuses people more than anything else when someone who seems to care, who shows up in moments that matter, who mirrors you, who seems to feel something real, suddenly sabotages everything. It's one of the most painful experiences in a relationship with an avoidant, because just when you think things are finally getting closer, deeper, more connected, they create distance. They provoke fights, they pull away, disappear, or worse, say things that sound cruel or cold, and your mind goes into chaos. How could someone go from warm to cold like that? What did I do wrong? Was it all fake? But what most people don't realize is that for avoidance, sabotage is not about a lack of love. It's about the presence of it. See, to someone with avoidant attachment, love doesn't feel like safety. It feels like exposure. And when they start to fall for you, it triggers something ancient and subconscious. The memory of emotional dependency that once led to disappointment, betrayal, or abandonment. They don't fear love itself. They fear what love unlocks in them. Vulnerability, need, longing. The very emotions they've spent their entire life trying to suppress. So when those feelings surface, when the bond becomes too real, too powerful, their survival brain kicks in and screams, get out, shut it down, destroy this before it destroys you. And so they do. Not with malicious intent, not because they want to hurt you, but because it's the only way they know how to reclaim control. Sabotage becomes the exit strategy from emotional intensity. They'll create distance where there was once closeness. They'll suddenly become critical of things they used to adore. They'll nitpick, ghost, withhold, or even convince themselves you're not the right one, but not because you changed, but because they changed. Because now you've triggered something in them that they're not ready to face. And here's where the tragedy lies. They often hurt the very person they feel the most for. Avoidants don't sabotage the casual relationships. They don't panic over people they're lukewarm about. They sabotage you, the one who got under their skin. The one who sees them, the one who brought the walls down just enough to glimpse the heart they swore they'd never show. Because to them, emotional closeness is like standing too close to a fire. It warms them, but it also threatens to burn. And when it gets too warm, they'll throw water on it. Not because they want to kill the flame, but because they don't know how to handle the heat. The irony is devastating. They're running from the very thing they've always wanted, deep connection, real intimacy. But they were never given the tools to hold it. So they destroy what they love before it has the chance to leave them first. Now, here's what you need to understand. When this happens, your response determines everything. If you take it personally, if you internalize their sabotage as your failure, you play into the very cycle they fear: abandonment, emotional chaos, instability. But if you see it for what it is, a trauma response, a fear-based defense mechanism, you gain your power back. You realize it's not your job to fix them, but it is your job to hold your own emotional ground. Because someone who sabotages love isn't looking for someone to chase them. They're looking deep down for someone who doesn't crumble when they do. Someone who stands firm, steady, whole, even when they fall apart. That's how trust is built with an avoidant. Not through chasing, not through reassurance, but through example. Through the unshakable energy of someone who says, I see what you're doing, and I won't collapse in response. Doesn't mean tolerating emotional abuse. It doesn't mean staying in cycles of dysfunction. It means recognizing the root behind the reaction and choosing whether your presence is helping to heal that pattern or enabling it. At the end of the day, sabotage from an avoidant is not proof of their indifference, it's proof of their fear. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not rescue them from their discomfort, but show them what it looks like to feel the fear and still stay open. Because love isn't just about staying, it's about staying whole. So if you've been sabotaged, don't ask, why did they do this to me? Ask instead, what truth was I too powerful for them to handle? And then walk in that truth, because that's the love they never learned to give, but you can choose to give to yourself. Let's break one of the most dangerous assumptions people make in relationships, that silence means someone doesn't care. That if they're not saying it, they're not feeling it. That absence equals apathy. But with avoidance, that belief will destroy your understanding of their love. Because avoidants don't love out loud. They love in silence. When an avoidant goes quiet, when they retreat into their inner world, it's not always because they've disconnected from you. More often than not, it's because they've connected to something inside themselves that terrifies them, and they don't have the language to explain it. Avoidants don't grow up in emotional fluency. They grow up in survival. So when deep feelings arise, feelings they can't control, label, or process, they shut down. Not to manipulate you, not to punish you, but to protect themselves from emotional vulnerability they were never taught how to hold. Silence becomes their sanctuary, their way of managing the storm without creating one outside of them. And the irony is brutal. Just when you want closeness, they feel the urge to vanish. Just when you're ready to deepen the bond, they slip into isolation. And it feels like rejection, abandonment, betrayal, but in their mind, it's actually self-preservation. They believe, if I speak, I'll say something wrong. If I open up, I'll be seen too clearly. If I reach out, I might be hurt or controlled. So instead, they do the only thing that feels safe, nothing. But don't confuse that nothingness with emptiness. Inside that silence is a storm of emotion, a tug of war between their need for love and their fear of being undone by it. Avoidants process love internally, in solitude, in reflection, in withdrawal. They think before they speak, they analyze before they act, and if they don't have the words to describe what they feel, they'd rather retreat than risk being misunderstood. Because to an avoidant, being misunderstood feels like failure, not just relationally, but existentially. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to learn to listen to the energy behind their silence. Because their love doesn't always show up in words. It shows up in presence, in protection, in proximity. Sometimes the fact that they haven't walked away is the loudest declaration they're capable of making. It means you need to stop demanding expressions they don't yet have the capacity to give. Not because your needs are too much, but because they were never taught to speak the language you fluently use. They're not withholding affection to punish you. They're searching for the courage to feel it themselves. And the silence of an avoidant is often filled with questions they don't dare ask out loud. Do they still want me? Am I good enough? What if I lose them and it destroys me? You never hear these questions because to them, asking is too vulnerable, too revealing. So they go quiet and hope their absence won't push you away. And this is where so many people get it wrong. They chase, they panic, they over-explain. They try to decode the silence by filling it with noise. But that only makes the avoidant retreat further. Not because they don't care, but because now they feel responsible for your emotional regulation too. And that feels like pressure, which feels like danger. The better strategy? Hold your frame. Stay grounded. Let their silence speak without making it about your worth. Because in that space, something powerful happens. The avoidant begins to realize that connection doesn't have to mean chaos. That presence doesn't have to cost them their autonomy. That love can exist without losing control. And when they come back from the silence, they won't apologize in the way you might expect. There might be no grand confession, no emotional flood, but they'll come back subtly, quietly, consistently. They'll check in. They'll mirror again. They'll match your rhythm. And that is how they say, I missed you. So don't rush the silence. Don't fear it. Learn to respect it. Because for the avoidant, silence isn't rejection, it's incubation. It's where their love goes to find its shape. The loudest hearts don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper in absence, hoping you'll still hear them.